From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Rhode Island inches closer to legalizing recreational marijuana every year. This week on the first half of Newsmakers, we take a look at lessons learned from Colorado and what Rhode Island might do differently if lawmakers give it the green light. Then, 2 years of college are already tuition-free at CCRI. Now the governor wants to expand her Rhode Island Promise initiative to Rhode Island College. Qualified students would get the last 2 years of their four-year degree on the house. But can the state afford it? Our guest on the second half of Newsmakers, Rhode Island College President Frank Sánchez. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program, as always, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. And we welcome on the first half, all the way from California, he is the former director of marijuana coordination in Colorado. His name is Andrew Freedman. Hello, Andrew.
Pleasure. And
from Rhode Island, Norm Birenbaum, who has become the chief marijuana policy expert for the Raimondo administration. Hi, Norm. All right, let's dive right in. Andrew, we're going to start with you. We wanted to talk to you here to get the lessons learned from Colorado as Rhode Island is in the discussion of legalizing marijuana. But if we're being honest here, isn't it too soon to say how things went in Colorado? Pot began selling legally there in 2014. You're a data guy. We really don't have a clue what the long-term impacts are.
Absolutely, and actually that's most of the time how I begin telling people is, public health data is frustrating in the way that you really should be 10, 20 years out before you learn anything about what happened before. But the world moves much faster than that, and so it's not that we can't have lessons learned from what happened in Colorado. I mean, very clearly there's an education curve to using edibles, and you can figure that out right away because people are calling the Poison Control Center lines. And so there are some lessons to be gathered. My job is a lot less to tell you whether or not legalization has this cost or this benefit to society, but just what are the best ways of taking all of the potential negative externalities and minimizing them as quickly as possible.
What was the biggest mistake Colorado made?
I think from a 10,000 square foot, 10,000 foot view, the biggest problem is we viewed the unregulated market and the regulated market as the same thing for a very long time. And
so black market versus...
Yeah, we called it the gray market. You grow legally but sell illegally. And we were hearing a lot of complaints from communities about potential violence, people renting homes and destroying them, and we lumped it kind of all, we being me, but also kind of the public, lumped it all as cannabis industry. And when we started to really dig down into the data in the oncoming years, that we saw, there's a big problem in the unregulated part, this gray market or black market, that we are not seeing with our regulated licensees. And once we saw that, we really had to start doing things that I think were unpopular, but really started to say, these are ways you can't grow at home, these are ways you can't grow even as a medical patient. And that was the biggest lesson learned.
Norm, I canvassed some State House sources about where things stand with the administration's push for legalization, and the prospects seem very limited right now that you're going to get legalization this year out of the General Assembly. How optimistic are you that that'll go through, or do you think we're at this point just discussing it for some future year?
No, I think we're very optimistic that the legislature is going to join the governor in doing the responsible thing. Okay, we as a state have one of the highest per capita uses of marijuana in the country. We've had one of the highest per capita uses for the last decade. That is only going to be exacerbated and increased when you look at dispensaries that are open 200 feet over the state line in Massachusetts, 10 minutes over the state line to Massachusetts, more that are going to be opening in Fall River, in Attleboro. The fact that Connecticut this week has made progress in legalizing there to our south. We need to take a pragmatic approach to say, what resources are we going to have for public health and public safety to deal with the externalities of marijuana use? And if we do nothing this year, it's not like we're going to have less marijuana. It's not like we're going to have solutions for law enforcement in terms of impaired driving and drug recognition expert training. It's not like we're going to have additional resources for the Department of Health to do public health monitoring and surveillance. We're not going to have resources for the Department of Behavioral Health.
Let me stop you there, Norm, because I think we asked this to the governor too last time she was on. You don't necessarily have to legalize to find resources to deal with marijuana, right? It's just you guys don't want to find the money elsewhere in the budget. So you're saying we have to legalize so we can have some tax revenue to pay for those things. I mean,
it's not just about revenue, it's also very much about consumer protection, right? You have so many people using this substance that could have mold, mildew, very high potency and dangerous forms of marijuana, which leads to higher incidence of public or of substance use disorder, right? We're saying let's address the problems that exist right now, and the best way to do that is to regulate and restrict access to these products, and to make sure the products that will be used and are being used today are as safe as possible, are properly packaged in child-resistant, tamper-evident packaging so kids can't get into them. They're properly labeled with the proper warnings. We are able to do the education around youth use and get information into the hands of teens, into parents, into pastors, into clergy, into teachers, the people where other states have shown us this has been effective. And in talking about the lessons learned from other states, yes, looking at this from a 10 or 20 year kind of epidemiological viewpoint or lens, there are still many unknowns, but we know a lot of things about from looking at Colorado, Washington, and Oregon. We know that we should have a tax rate that puts into place some type of weight-based excise tax so that prices don't plummet like what's happening in Oregon right now, where they can stop all production and still have a stable industry for the next 6 years. They have 5 pounds for every man, woman, and child, and that's a problem. We know that we should be having robust regulations around edibles so that we don't repeat the mistakes that Colorado made. I mean, there are a lot of lessons that have been learned here around the forms of marijuana that should be allowed, the ways that we should be testing it, the forms that, or the ways it should be packaged, labeled, advertised, right? There are a lot of lessons learned here that we should be using and utilizing, and if we don't, it's going to be to the detriment of public health and public safety.
Andrew, when I asked you what the biggest thing or problem you ran into, you basically said homegrown pot.
Yeah.
Is it your recommendation to lawmakers in Rhode Island that people should not be allowed to grow their own pot at home?
You just ensured that the hate mail that will come to me is going to be much more this week. I would say that I would say that for right now, because of the weird economics around marijuana being worth a lot more in one state than it is in another, that home grow can be dangerous. I think very limited medical systems, and I think for the most part, it needs to be going through the regulated
It's
system.
just interesting your reaction when we talk about this, and you talk about hate mail. This obviously is a lightning rod issue.
Yeah,
and we hear it too. I mean, when Norm's the administration's proposal came out, I'd say the home grow restriction, nearly a ban, really, on home grow in the proposal is the thing we heard about the most from viewers.
Yeah, and you get it in some ways, right? Like, there's a lot of people that just want to responsibly grow at home and just say, hey, it's a lot like brewing beer. The problem is right now, when you grow a few plants at home, it can be worth up to $18,000 really quickly, and that's in somebody's basement, right? And what we started to see very quickly in Colorado was literal murders from that. And so it's hard to come back and say, hey, it's worthwhile for you to be able to grow at home when it actually does make your community less safe. And so when I look at the proposal the governor's put forward, I think putting out there that there should be a ban on home grows when this goes forward, which, by the way, that never happens in any other community. I mean, that's one of the positives about the governor leading the way in this is really putting forward some hard choices like that. I think that would save lives. I do think that it's unfortunate that it's a liberty we can't have, but it's just way too much very valuable material right in the middle of somebody's community, and it should be going through the regulated system.
And we have a history of this in the state. I mean, every single year, because of such robust and unregulated home grows within the medical program, we have dozens and dozens of fires, right? We have robberies, we have stabbings, we had someone who was dismembered and thrown in the ocean. And not to be hyperbolic about this, but it happens. People create these grows, with ad hoc systems around ventilation and HVAC and irrigation, and it's very dangerous. And because of the patient privacy provisions that are in place, code inspectors and building inspectors can't just go in there and make sure it's safe. I think last year we had a family of 4 that was sent to the hospital. The mother ended up dying, and that was attributed to lack of ventilation and carbon monoxide poisoning around a home grow. So the question is it worth it on a recreational or adult use market? When it comes to the medical side, we recognize that people need to be able to home grow because they can't right now go 5 or 10 minutes to a local compassion center or dispensary to find the variety of medicine that they need in a quantity that they need at an affordable price, like they can for other medicines and treatments that they use to treat their medical conditions at a CVS or a Rite Aid or some other pharmacy. The goal for us is to create a system where patients don't have to grow it themselves. They can go someplace close by, locally, where it's regulated, it's tested, it's safe, it's tracked, and it's affordable, and that outlet has what they need.
Let me ask you, stick with you, Norm. Senator Chacon put in a bill this week with the Senate President's co-sponsorship that would expand the medical marijuana program by adding 3 more compassion centers and allow medical marijuana for acute pain. Could the administration support that as a compromise and kick legalization down the road? Of recreational.
I think the devil is in the details, and what the senator is trying to do here in increasing access and distribution to the medical program is great, and that's in line with some of the core goals that the administration has had in this budget, last year's budget, the year before that's budget. This is not a substitute, though, for a robust adult use system and program and regulatory framework, which is going to provide resources to public health and public safety. One is not a substitute for the other. I think we have to look at the details of that bill, see how it's structured. It's relatively new. I think I just saw the language last night or the night before. And in theory, we agree with some of the things that he's trying to accomplish. We want to make sure, though, that the details are right, and also that we're not taking half measures when we should be taking full steps.
Andrew,
Yep.
When some elected officials consider legalization, they see dollar signs. Was this a cash windfall for Colorado?
No, I mean, listen, the tax revenue is nice. All tax revenue is nice, but at the peak of it, we're coming in with about $250 million a year in tax revenue, which is, again, very real money, but out of a $37 billion budget. So it's less than 1% of the budget. And I think the other thing that happens is because it makes the news so often, in voters' minds, it's a much bigger a pile of cash than there actually is in proportion to the entire budget. And so I always say don't do it for the tax revenue, do it because you believe it's a better way of protecting public health and public safety.
Speaking of cash, we only have a couple of minutes left. Pot is a cash business because it is not legal at the federal level. And like home growing, cash businesses are prone to crime. How do you deal with that?
Well,
Norm, go
if
ahead.
I can jump in here, you're absolutely right. However, there's federal guidance to banking institutions on how to bank marijuana-related businesses. So what the Department of Business Regulation did when we came in about 3 years ago is we brought in our state chartered banks and credit unions. We went over the federal due diligence, the federal guidance. We went over their obligations in terms of suspicious activity reporting, what they have to do to comply with their due diligence, our licensing process, and what we do to make sure people are following state law. And as a result of that, I think it's 47 licensees that we have right now in our medical program. Every single one of them has access to depository banking. So the only cash that exists right now is at the point of sale of the actual product at the dispensaries, and then it all gets deposited into an account, and then from there, payroll and rent and wholesale transactions are all done through either check or electronic money transfer. So we've done a very good job of being proactive, and we expect that would continue, and we continue to work with banks to make sure that this is not a problem.
Andrew, we have viewers, of course, in Massachusetts, too, along with Rhode Island, and I'm sure you've been watching how legalization's gone there. What's your initial takeaways, lessons from how legalization is unrolled in Massachusetts, from what you've seen in Red?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's been overall a responsible rollout compared to other parts of the country, and for the size that they have to go through, it's a pretty heavy lift. It sounds like they need a lot of help figuring out how to talk between the local communities and the state government about who has what power, and kind of in the end it's a little bit coming down to who's going to make some money on this deal. And I think there are some good people at the state trying to tamp down that talk and really create a more reasonable communication between the locals. But for right now, that's the big pain point. I think once you see that work its way out of the system, Massachusetts is on track to have one of the more responsible systems, but there's certainly a lot of lessons learned. I do wish, like Rhode Island, they didn't allow for things like dabbing or the Rhode Island proposed legislation. And so they're always
dabbing, meaning THC, the potent THC that people put in vape pens or whatever it might be. Is that what you're talking about?
Vape pens probably a little less problematic than the kinds that you kind of bong hit in a large amount of very potent THC.
And in unregulated markets, you can see potency levels in the 90, 95%, and that people freak out essentially when they have that much in their system, right? It's
certainly a turn that I think, if again in a regulated style community, you would hope to see that start to come back a little bit, to say that's a product we probably shouldn't be pushing on consumers, much like tobacco had to go through a growing up phase and alcohol had to go through a growing up phase, that you can't have Four Loko, right? And you have to go back from that.
All right, Andrew Freedman, he's the former director of marijuana coordination in Colorado, and Birenbaum from the Rhode Island Department of Business Regulation. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. When we come back, a conversation about free college tuition. We have the president of Rhode Island College, Dr. Frank Sánchez. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my left, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi, and we welcome on the second half the president of Rhode Island College, Dr. Frank Sánchez. President Sánchez, welcome back to the program.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks so much.
We want to talk about the Rhode Island Promise proposal or proposed expansion. You and the governor want to expand Rhode Island Promise so qualified students can get their last 2 years of their four-year degree on the house at Rhode Island College. When we talk about this issue, when we report on this issue, we get a lot of negative feedback on it, to be candid. People don't like the idea, maybe because they had to pay their way through college. In 60 seconds, what's your pitch to them?
Sure.
How do you change their mind?
No, it's a great question. I think my pitch would be certainly all Rhode Islanders will benefit from the promise, but I think in particular, as I've talked to folks, we get a very strong response from middle-class, working-class families that for the first time, they're going to have the opportunity to see a break to send their child to college. Here, oftentimes those that come from lower income are eligible for federal aid, subsidized loans. If you're a high-income individual, you have choices to send your child to a university or college. But for the middle class, particularly when tuition goes up, you get squeezed because you're not eligible for federal aid and you don't have the resources. So the middle and working class, the folks I've talked to, are excited about the opportunity to have a serious conversation about how to pay for college. And so I think there's huge benefit, again, to all Rhode Islanders, but I think in particular it's a way of right-sizing tuition. Again, it's not free education. You're still paying $20,000 before any federal aid for your tuition. It's really allowing us to right-size tuition, make affordable, high-quality education in Rhode Island.
Look, it's just to make sure people understand, you can't do 2 years at CCRI and then 2 free years at Rick and get 4 years. There's no way to do a 4-year degree for free under this proposal?
The legislation does not allow you to do that. Either you can start at CCRI, get those 2 years, but to receive the new model, the promise at Rhode Island College, you actually have to attend the first 2 years and then potentially qualify for the benefit. But there's several benchmarks that have to be made. And I'm convinced there's a lot of folks who are going to try to get the benefit but won't qualify because you have to complete first 60 credit hours. That's 2 years, full-time student on path to a 4-year degree. On top of that, you have to have at least a minimum GPA of 2.5. That's significantly above good academic standing.
A lot of people disagree with you on that. I'm sure you've heard it.
Sure.
People think that the GPA should be at least 3.0. What's the percentage, President, of students going into their junior year that get a 2.5 at Rick?
Well, that's a good question. I can get you the data.
I put you on the spot, but
no, that's fine. What we do know, and just at Rhode, looking at Rick, what we do know is a lot of students in good academic standing in their junior and senior year have to stop out to make ends meet, to be able to come back to school because they've run out of resources. This would allow us to allow those students to help them get over the finish line so they can get into our economy and contribute back to the state. Again, we see many students that they save and save, they get through the first year, pay for their tuition, they beg and borrow the second year, and then come the third year, they're in good academic standing, they've demonstrated they can do the work, but they just can't make ends meet. And that's why we see at Rhode Island College, we're actually above the national average for peers at 5- and 6-year graduation rates because of that very model.
You hear a lot of skepticism right now at the legislature that not even necessarily about the program itself, but more if there's the money, because it looking like a more difficult budget year than they'd hoped. Right now, are you Are you a little more concerned about the odds of actually getting this into the budget than you might have been back in January?
Yeah, I think you're right. As I've talked to legislators, both one-on-one and testifying, there's not a lot of debate on the policy. I know some folks may disagree with the policy, but that hasn't been the big concern. It's always been one of affordability. I think we're all waiting to hear what May 9th, May 10th, the revenue projections for the state, the job projections, and I think that's going to help paint the picture a little bit more clearly of whether or not we can get this done. Of course, the Speaker and the Governor will have to sit down and see what they prioritize during this budget season, and we'll kind of go from there.
Question for you about the CCRI promise, which of course already exists. You do hear sometimes people concerned that that is actually hurting RIC, because students who might have gone to RIC say, oh, well, if I can do 2 years for free at CCRI, which right now is the only option that's available from the state, I'll do that and I won't go to RIC. Have you been hurt, do you feel, your institution, by the CCRI Promise program?
Sure. So when I arrived, there was a good probably 10 years, frankly, of declining enrollment at Rhode Island College. So we put a number of systems in place, better technology, better outreach, a better strategy of enrollment at the college. We did see a little bit of a dip, not unanticipated. We knew if this went through just for CCRI, we would see a decline in enrollments, and we did as a result. Not too dissimilar than what happened at Tennessee, which the Tennessee Promise, very similar, the Rhode Island Promise was modeled after. They saw a decline of about 3,000 students at their state colleges the following year. Being the only state college in the state, we anticipated some decline, and we did see that.
Have you met with the Speaker on this issue?
I have one-on-one. Well, I think, in fact, I just met with him again on a different matter, but this came up just a couple days ago, and he's saying we need to see what the revenue projections are. We need to see what our budget looks like. It is still for him very much an issue of affordability.
What was the other matter?
Oh, we were together celebrating, actually, our student athletes that were being recognized at the State House. So that's what that was.
Right.
We always got to check.
Yeah, you have to check
absolutely.
on that. I just want to shift gears. We'll probably go back to that in a moment. But I got to ask you about the shell casing found at Rhode Island College.
Sure.
That was a big story this week, mainly at CCRI. CCRI, the shell casing was found in the building. They evacuated the campus that day. The next day on Thursday, right, there was a shell casing found there. So we're taping this on a Friday. First of all, is there anything new on where the investigation stands from yesterday?
There's not anything new at this point. I know the shell has been taken to a lab to get reviewed a little bit more closely, but just to give you a quick run through what happened at the college, a student was coming to class, they saw the shell in a parking lot, different from CCRI they found in a building. Here it was in a parking lot. Immediately, thankfully, and it's good that our student took action, called our public safety. They responded immediately to assess the situation, called in Providence PD as well, and I have to say our new chief of police, now 5 days on the job, Chief Mendonça, but here's a 30-plus year veteran as an officer, Marine Corps trained, just a thorough gentleman, assessed the situation with the assistance of Providence PD and made a determination there wasn't a threat, that we didn't have to close down the school and evacuate. And so I certainly trust their judgment. We had an emergency response team to ask a series of questions. Obviously, we take these matters extremely seriously because we have to make the right decision. And so after a very thorough review, we made a determination not to evacuate the campus.
Where's your head at now on your police officers being armed?
So, right now, I think what is so important, particularly with our new chief of police, is he has to do, and I'm charging him to do a full review and looking at all of our resources available. Do we have the right tools for our officers right now? What are the regional and national best practices for higher education institutions, taking in consideration that we're flanked certainly by North Providence PD and Providence PD, and what should be the level of investment and the type of tools that our officers need to have. And so it's really we need to wait to see what this review looks like and what the recommendations are going to come forward.
Your contract is up. Do you plan on staying?
Yeah, I'm very excited, and I'm happy to say that we have a tentative agreement on the contract. We've built some tremendous momentum and growth at the college the last 3 years, and I'm looking forward to another 3 years.
I was we had our guests on the first half, I could see you in the corner of my eye off camera. And I wondered, as a college president, do you have any concerns about the prospect of legalized marijuana in this state?
No, this absolutely, it creates a new dynamic in college campuses. You know, you have to take in consideration to what degree you're going to enforce, for example, in your residence halls. If it's for leisure, you know, and you can take it around, are you going to make it acceptable? They can bring it on campus in a public, you know, being a public institution, and how do you enforce that? We would obviously call up our higher education institution friends in Colorado and other states to see how, now that they've been doing it for several years, and I'm very familiar with that area. I used to work at the University of Colorado, Denver, as well as Adams State University as a administrator down there. So we would call them and say what new policies and practices and protocols they put in place to address some of those concerns.
It sounds like those conversations are already happening now with the prospect of them coming. All right,
Absolutely.
Dr. Frank Sánchez, president of Rhode Island College, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program. On the first half, we had a conversation about the prospect of legalizing marijuana in Rhode Island. If you missed it, it's on WPRI.com, and we always recommend that you subscribe to our podcast through iTunes. For Ted Nisi, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers. Thank you.